What's up, fellas? In the first video of the day, I kind of feel like we have to talk about Chris Paul. We have to talk about the season that he's having, his career in general. I just don't feel like there's enough Chris Paul appreciation going around right now. As the Suns are potentially pushing for the 1 seed in the West, they basically don't lose games anymore, and it's incredible the difference that Chris Paul makes on your basketball team over the last handful of years, and it's something that I just wanted to talk about in the first video of the day. But really quickly before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload twice a day, every single day on this channel, so it's a great place for the most consistent NBA content on YouTube. If you're new here, by the way, what's up? My name is Tucker. You can also leave a like rating on the videos as well, and you can check me out at various socials in a Linktree link down in the description below. Really quickly before we get started, I want to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Ridge. For way too long, I used to carry around a traditional bulky wallet, but if you're like I used to be and you're looking for a wallet solution that is light and sleek, then Ridge has you covered. Their design combines functionality as it can carry up to 12 cards and cash with ease of use as it fits easily in your pocket. There are over 30 different style and color combinations. They're made with durable materials and they come with a lifetime warranty. So no more withering away wallets, just one simple Ridge wallet. And if you use my code SPORTING10 at checkout at ridge.com, you get 10% off as well as free international shipping. Again, SPORTING10 at checkout at ridge.com. And thank you again to Ridge for sponsoring this video. With all those things said, let's go ahead and talk about Chris Paul. So, what Chris Paul is doing this season pretty much has no precedent, okay? So, when you go back and look throughout NBA history, smaller guards, especially point guards, don't age particularly well, right? And even within an era in which guys are increasingly getting better at playing better at a later age in their career, there still isn't any historical precedent or any way that we would have expected Chris Paul to be this good at this age. He's like 36 or 37. I could be getting that number wrong. And he's got a ton of minutes on his body. A couple years ago, he looked completely washed, and he's like a top 20 to top 25 guy in the league. Like that just doesn't happen. And given where Phoenix was before he got there, the impact that he's had, I think that you could make a case that Chris Paul needs to be a part of the MVP conversation. Now, granted, of course, he's not going to win it, but you could make the case that he should be a top 5 MVP candidate right now based off the impact that he's had on this Phoenix roster. Let's go there first, and then we'll kind of talk about the stuff beforehand. So, this year in Phoenix, it became pretty clear about 20 to 25 games in that this was a real team, right? I made a video about them very, very quickly in the season because it became apparent quickly that they just weren't going to put bad basketball players on the court, right? And that was going to be such a hugely positive thing for them, especially considering their history of not having a ton of great players over the last handful of years. The combination of Paul, Booker, and Ayton was going to be very good, obviously, assuming that Ayton was going to continue to develop as he has throughout the season. They've got other decent, competent wings, young guys, all this different stuff that kind of works. But they had most, if not all of that, last year. And up until the bubble, they did basically nothing. And then they went on this great stretch in the bubble. And without that, I don't even know where this team would be. But to go from where they were last year, from a record standpoint, to then getting Chris Paul in the offseason and now being where they are shows the true value of Chris Paul that needs to be appreciated. This guy, all he does is win, no matter where he is, right? Even early on in the New Orleans days, there were 50-plus win teams, within his first couple of years in the league. And not that they were bad teams, Tyson Chandler, David West, whatever, but just not something that you would have expected from that franchise or given, kind of the roster that they had put together, and was really good in New Orleans. Ultimately didn't want to be there anymore. I don't think anybody necessarily blamed him for that. Goes to the Clippers, and I think this is where people started to kind of chip away at the legacy a little bit of Chris Paul is those Clippers teams were really good. There were points in time, not for significant stretches, but there were specific points in time in which you could have made the argument that those Clippers teams at various points were the best team in the league, right? And of course, they never make the conference finals. They never have the postseason success that people really wanted them to have. Some of that had to do with Paul. Some of that had to do with injury stuff. And ultimately, it just never happened for them. They had some really great moments, you know what I mean? But they never really put it all together in a championship contending type way. And at that point, people just kind of wrote off Chris Paul in terms of playoff success. They're like, he's a smaller guard. He's very good. He knows how to win, but he's also very ball dominant. And that's kind of where we left it, right? And then the big turning point for me in terms of how we've kind of thought about the rest of Chris Paul's career is when he gets to Houston, right? Because he gets there and that Rockets team that won 65 games, I will, for as long as I'm on NBA YouTube, I will advocate for the fact that I think that was the best team in the league that year. And had Chris Paul not injured his hamstring, they would have beaten the Warriors and they would have won the title. And that would have been completely legacy changing for him, for Harden, for the Rockets, in so many different ways, right? I believe they were the best team in the league. They were playing out of their mind, and it's just a really unfortunate injury at the worst time, which you could say is part of the legacy of Chris Paul. Some of that unluckiness and some of the injury stuff where he just can't sustain it for an entire year, and that's some of the concern that comes in with this Phoenix roster this year, as he is now a handful of years older, than that Rocket season there. But he meshed seamlessly with James Harden for at least that one season, and then things, fell apart after that. And I will fully admit, that year in Houston, before we left, I thought Chris Paul was done. I watched him play, and I just said to myself, he lost a step. He doesn't quite have it. He's never really going to be fully 100% healthy ever again, and it's been a fantastic career, but that's pretty much all she wrote for Chris Paul. And I will fully admit that that's kind of where I was at with him. And for it to now be turned around, for him to go to Oklahoma City, be as good as he was, and then be leading a team that I think is a legitimate championship team this year, by the way, a legitimate contender in Phoenix. This is not just a happy little story of them being a good regular season team. Phoenix is a good team. And for Chris Paul to just have such a hugely positive impact on winning at every stop is incredible. And I think is something that we need to remember him for, whether he ends up winning a title or not. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't have very many more chances at it, of course, and surely not as like a truly relevant guy on the team. I don't want him to ultimately be remembered as a guy that won like a Jason Kidd type title, you know what I mean, on the Mavericks in 2011. But for him to go from completely washed in Houston, I was out on the Chris Paul thing. It was like, he's making a ton of money. There's nothing really here anymore in terms of an all-star level, and I thought he was washed. I thought Houston was in a really bad spot with the Chris Paul thing. And ultimately, he gets moved for Russell Westbrook. He goes to Oklahoma City, and he's awesome. That's probably going to be the missing piece moving forward as we remember the legacy of Chris Paul. As people are going to remember how good he was in New Orleans initially. Those Clippers teams, some of the failures there. The Rockets thing, how close they were to legitimizing Chris Paul and James Harden's careers in a lot of people's eyes. And then they're just going to fast forward to, and then remember when he turned it around, was really good in Phoenix? That Oklahoma City season is so incredibly relevant and important to the legacy of Chris Paul because it showed his ability to decide, I'm not done yet. There are so many guys in league history, and again, specifically with smaller guards, with point guards, pretty much every guy in league history that gets to the point in their career that Chris Paul got to where they've lost a step, they're not as quick, and they're just not on the same level that they used to. That's it. They're done. That's the end of their career. He figured out some other stuff with his diet and his injury recovery and things like that and became an incredible player. That Oklahoma City team last year had no business winning as many games as they did. I think they won almost 50 games with 48 and something. They almost advanced to the second round. They came into that season not necessarily tanking, but as about as close to tanking as you can be prior to the season without actually coming out and saying, hey, we're probably going to be tanking here. And we didn't even know if Chris Paul was going to be on the roster after a handful of weeks, if he was going to get instantly moved. It was clearly just they wanted to get assets out of Russell Westbrook, and they wanted to preserve some of that with Chris Paul. Then he turned into a fantastic asset. They got more stuff out of him as he now went to Phoenix, and it's been absolutely worth it for Phoenix, by the way, with some of the stuff that they gave up. And now he's leading a team that, again, I think has a legitimate chance to be a real contender. They might end up with the 1 seed, and they're continually overlooked because the Jazz went on this great run, and there's all this other stuff happening in the West and in the East. Phoenix is real, and a lot of that has to do with Chris Paul. No disrespect to what Phoenix did in the bubble last year, but an 8-game sample size of them going 8-0 in the bubble is not what turned them around into a true contender this season. For me personally, right? Because prior to that in the regular season, it's not like they were great, right? They had some good stretches, but it's not like they were great. It's the addition of Chris Paul, it's his ability to mesh well with someone like Devin Booker, which I'm not sure why we questioned in the first place. If Chris Paul could play with James Harden, they could make it work. I don't know why he wouldn't have been able to make it work with someone like Devin Booker in terms of some of the ball dominance and stuff like that. That's the difference maker, right? You've got a ton of young guys on this roster that don't really know what it looks like to be a top 2 seed in the West, right? Like, what does DeAndre Ayton know about being one of the best teams in the league? And ditto for Devin Booker and Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges, right? Some of these guys have had success at the college level, right? But at the NBA level, they don't know what it's like. And with the exception of other guys like Jay Crowder on the roster, Chris Paul's the only one bringing that, providing that, and he just continues to elevate the players around him in a way that heavily impacts winning, and it's something that I'm going to miss about Chris Paul as a lot of these kind of lead guards in the league go more towards scoring and not really leading and facilitating the team the way that the traditional point guard would. And I think Chris Paul is kind of the end of an era, in that respect. And the fact that he continues to do this at the advanced age that he is at relative to NBA terms, I'm not trying to call Chris Paul old or anything here, but guys don't do this at his size, at his age, And he has just been an incredible force in the league for so long. And I hope that he doesn't slow down anytime soon. I hope that he stays healthy in the postseason and legitimizes everything that he's done over the last handful of years, because it has been an incredible run and it needs to be appreciated. And that was basically all I wanted to do in this video. Appreciate Chris Paul. We're going to miss him when he's gone. He has been a historic, precedent-setting player as it relates to smaller guards and the longevity of their careers, and hope we get to see a lot more of him. And hopefully they have a ton of success in the postseason there in Phoenix as well. But yeah, that is going to be the end of the first video of the day, and I thank you guys very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. You can also leave a like rating on the videos as well if you're enjoying them, and you can check me out at various socials and a Linktree link down in the description below. With all those things said, hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your Thursday, and I will see you all next time.